Did Joe Biden just rewrite the rule book on presidential pardons? He issued a sweeping pardon to his son Hunter, covering every federal crime that he's committed in the past decade. And the best part has been watching the liberals try to justify it. Take a look.
Now look at the dance Democrats have to do.
Be honest. The only reason why they went after Hunter the way they did, and I've talked to many federal prosecutors about this, is because he's the president's son.
People have to remember the president has lost 2 children already, and he does not need to lose another one to more political witch hunts.
Crowing from Republicans, but we're talking about, Donald Trump is a convicted felon who literally pardoned his daughter's father-in-law and just made him ambassador to France.
So for anyone that wants to clutch their pearls now because he decided that he was going to pardon his son, I would say take a look in the mirror.
Here to break down how far-reaching this pardon is Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and Sean Davis. He's the CEO of the Federalist. So, Sean, thanks for joining us. How unprecedented is a pardon like this?
I think it is absolutely unprecedented. And based on the research that we've done looking at past pardons, which is admittedly a little tricky, we believe this is the most expansive, the most broad and wide-ranging pardon ever issued in American history. If you look at even the Richard Nixon pardon given to him by Gerald Ford in the wake of the Watergate scandal in 1974, that was only 5 years. This one that Hunter's gotten is 11 years. And you can go back even further if you want to look at pardons given to Confederate generals after the Civil War, people who literally waged war against the United States. Theirs were not as expansive as this. They at least had to go and pledge loyalty to the United States, apologize for what they had done. So to see the president give his son, who we all know acted as a bagman for him and his foreign influence peddling schemes, to see his son get the biggest, most widest ranging pardon in American history, it's shocking to me.
Well, Sean, what I love about this is that we're all learning about something that I'm personally shocked about, which is that the DOJ apparently has been conducting politically selective prosecutions. That's good to know, and we need to do something about this. I'm sure you feel the same. Do you think that this is revelatory in some way? I mean, does this really change the game? Are we in a bubble right now, or are we in a bubble right now talking to each other about things we already know? We already know this is how the system works, right? But some people are arguing that this is pulling down the veil and it will resonate and have a larger effect. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it resonates in 2 ways. It's revelatory in 2 ways. One is the dates involved. So it goes back to 2014. What was going on in 2014? Well, that's when Joe Biden, as vice president, was running point for Barack Obama's Ukraine policy. At that point in time, Biden was effectively the viceroy of Ukraine. A month later, in February 2014, the U.S. government helps to overthrow Ukraine's government. I believe 3 months later, in May of 2014, Hunter Biden was placed on the Burisma board, which he was paid millions of dollars to do. So it's revelatory just in what the dates show us, because for it to go back that far, it has to be related to things that Hunter was doing with Joe Biden at the time. But it also shows us certain things about how the Democrats view DOJ and how they view the pardon system. If they were worried about J6 protesters maybe being pardoned before this happened, they don't need to worry about that anymore, because that's 100% going to happen. By doing a pardon of this nature for the president's son, it basically makes it impossible for Democrats to complain or argue about any pardons going forward ever again.
Yeah, in this pardon, it's so vast, as you're saying, and there's actually a Democrat representative out there, Jerry Connolly, is out there saying we shouldn't have such sweeping pardons in the future. And it's interesting that this is coming from the Democratic side, because they know at some point the Republicans, this time it's going to be January 20th, Republicans are going to be back in office, Sean. So what should be done here moving forward?
Well, yeah, so a lot of people are complaining about the pardon. I personally don't have a problem with the pardon power. It's very explicit in the Constitution. The president has total authority to do this with 2 exceptions. 1, they have to be limited to federal offenses. And 2, you can't pardon someone who's been impeached. That's it. So the founders in their wisdom set this policy out and this power out for a reason. The bigger problem here is the corruption within DOJ. So Democrats are actually right on this count, but in the wrong direction. Hunter Biden was not the victim of selective persecution. He was not targeted because he's the president's son. This only ever happened. He should have been in jail 10 times over for what he was doing. They didn't nail him for his Burisma payments, for money laundering, for potential sex trafficking, for operating as an unregistered foreign agent. He was shown extreme deference. He was shown extreme favor because he was the president's son. And for the people on the left to come out and say DOJ's icky because it charged Hunter Biden for committing a gun crime we all knew he committed, while at the same time excusing a raid of Mar-a-Lago and Melania's and Barron's underwear drawers. Like, the problem here is a completely corrupt DOJ and FBI, and the pardon power is just downstream from that. So if you want to prevent this type of nonsense from happening again, we need to completely reform DOJ and FBI.
Well, as we know, no one is above the law. That's a fundamental part of American political life these days. What about Hunter in the future and the Biden family? Do you think that, the fallout of this, does everyone just move on? The Republicans move on? Will there actually be some sort of investigation? Some people are saying this puts Hunter in more of a bind in some ways, that he might actually have to, he'll spill the beans. What do you think about all that? Do we get anywhere with the Biden family?
I think a lot depends on where we go next. Is this going to be the only Biden family pardon? If not, if we see a pardon for James Biden, if we see Joe Biden himself give himself a pardon, which I believe is authorized under the Constitution, there's no limit on who a president can pardon. I think that will determine how Republicans handle this going forward. But you mentioned a great point with Hunter now no longer having any criminal legal liability for his activities over the last 11 years. He's no longer allowed to plead the Fifth Amendment and refuse to testify in federal cases, including before Congress, if he is subpoenaed and called to do so. So this may actually end up getting the Biden family in more trouble unless, of course, they pardon themselves and make it so no one can prosecute them ever.
Sean, in the time that we have left with you, I want to talk about the DEA nominee that Donald Trump had. It's Chad Chronister. He's a Florida sheriff. You, Thomas Massie, our colleague Liz Wheeler, you guys have all been out there and critical of this decision. So tell us a little bit about Chad.
Well, yeah, so Chad Chronister, he was the sheriff, or is the sheriff of the Tampa area, which has traditionally been pretty blue. So he did things that I think you might expect to see a blue politician do. He made arrests for breaking COVID. He was doing DEI stuff, celebrating Pride Day. And I think what we're going to need to figure out as he goes through these confirmation hearings for DEA director is, were you doing that because you thought you were doing the best to represent the blue citizens who elected you? Or were you doing that stuff because you really firmly believed in your heart that that was your job, that you had to be pushing this left-wing nonsense? And I think if he wants to take over DEA, which is really totally focused on rooting out cartels and international drug crime, I think he's going to need to show in these hearings and throughout the confirmation process that he is completely devoted to Trump's agenda, to rooting out cartel violence and drug trafficking. And whether he can do that successfully will determine whether he's going to get confirmed as DEA director.
Sean, you mentioned, I think rightly, that you said there's thousands of solid sheriffs in this country who are far more qualified to run DEA. You're certainly right. There's thousands of sheriffs who are qualified. I've met a number of them through the Claremont programs that I'm involved with still. But do you have anyone in particular that you think would be a great fit for DEA?
No, I don't. And it's because it's such a particular job, especially within DOJ, which is where DEA is. You need someone who has the confidence of the attorney general and has the confidence of the president and then has the confidence of the American people. So Chad Chronister might be a great guy for the job. He might be the perfect person to say, yes, sir, Mr. Commander in Chief, I'm going to go down there and destroy cartels. But we need to know, how committed was he to that woke COVID nonsense? How committed was he to DEI stuff? Or was he just doing it because he thought that was the law? That's what he thought he was elected to do. And how he answers that, I think, will determine his at least near-term political future.